Hello and welcome to Digital Marketing Monday. I'm your host, Tim Strawbridge. So this week, we're going to be talking about website monitoring, what it is. We're going to go over some terminology. We're also going to discover why we need website monitoring. And we're also going to look at what happens when you don't monitor your websites. So first, website monitoring is really just making sure that a website is up and running. So we're checking for availability. Another aspect of website monitoring is performance. So we're monitoring server load. It could be CPU usage. We're also monitoring hosting as well. And then there's functionality. So sometimes we want to monitor different user actions like button clicks and things of that nature. So there's really three aspects in website monitoring that we need to understand and know about. A little bit of different terminology in monitoring software. So there's ping. Ping is a request that is sent to a computer to check for its reachability. So that could be another host on a different system or another computer or server or whatnot. There's a command that we usually use. It's called ping. And basically what that does is it checks to make sure that that host is reachable. So the response to that is what is called ping time. So ping time is the time that it takes for a packet basically to be delivered to another computer and then back to the requester, or if you're doing the ping, that would be you. It's usually expressed in milliseconds, and there's some good ping times and there's some bad ping times, and you need to be aware that what these are. So an excellent ping time would be something less than 30 milliseconds. A good ping time would be usually from like 30 to 50 milliseconds. You're doing okay if you're a little bit over 50 or to 100. So that's generally acceptable and all right. Anything more than 100 is really considered slow, and you need to find out why you have a high ping time. Something else that's important too is the TTFB, or the time to first byte. So that's basically a measurement of the website's responsiveness. So TTFB is the time that it takes for a web browser to respond with the first byte of data from the web server. Generally, the lower the number, the better. And that's also expressed in milliseconds. And you have different aspects to TTFB. So you have, there's different time categories basically. There's time that it takes for a DNS server to resolve your name. So generally it starts with a request to a web server. So it's a named web server. So if you say, if you type in Google, basically it's looking up the IP address that it has to contact. After that, there's a connection time. If the site is using SSL, there's that time that it takes to actually establish an SSL connection. And by the way, SSL does take a little bit more time than HTTP. There's also a send time. So that's sending the information back to the server, or to the browser, I'm sorry. And there's also a wait time. So that could generally just be anything that's getting in the way and just on the browser front end. And then there's the receive time. So all of these times play a factor in the time to first byte. The third piece of terminology that we need to understand is uptime. So uptime is just the amount of time that a web server has stayed online, or its availability rather. So this is just really a continuous measurement. It's usually expressed in a percentage. So if I said over a month's period that my website, swdevteam.com, had stayed online, or its uptime was 98% within that month period, that means 98% of the time it was available. So why do we monitor websites? That's a really good question. We monitor them simply because they're a really important part of business. If a website is running ads and the website is down, visitors aren't going to have a good reaction to that. Websites deliver value to users, and if the website is not performing or working well, then value can't be delivered. We also monitor websites for their performance. So here's some common performance metrics that we use. So time to first byte, or TTFB, and uptime. So what do you think happens when you don't monitor your website? Unfortunately, not utilizing some sort of website monitoring tool, it can be really hard to know when a website is down. One would think if you just had to monitor one site that it might be okay just to go to the web browser and check the website periodically, but that's that's really just not practical. So now for some Q&A. So Jas from Colorado: I'm having trouble keeping track of my files. Whenever I need to update some source code for a website, I usually just rename the file and upload all the updated files. The problem is, the last time this happened, the website I was working on went down. What is a good solution that helps with this? So Jas, it's really all about workflow. So hearing what you're dealing with, I would say that you need some type of version control and a good deployment method. So there's all types of different tools for that. I like Git, but really just feel free and just explore what's out there. Some common tools for version control: GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Those are pretty common. I think Bitbucket and GitLab are paid versions. I'm not really sure if they have a free version or not. But I also like GitHub as well. Also, I mentioned deployment. So this is basically whenever you want to push changes that you have made to a production server. So if you make changes on local and then you push it out to a staging server, and then you would push that out to a production server. So that's how the source code is going to be migrated from one to another. And basically what's happening is you can set a server up to what we call have webhooks. So your GitLab, Gitbucket, GitHub could have a webhook that's triggered that will respond in a certain action to basically deploy out to another server, to your production server or your staging server, whichever. So that would help out a lot as far as putting the files on the server. And it actually all starts with putting, your Git, your GitHub, your GitLab, Bitbucket, or whatnot on the server and letting the server pull the files. It really depends on the platform that you're using. Something that is designed for Laravel may not work for WordPress. If you're using WordPress, I would recommend using WP Engine. That's a pretty good, it has pretty good options, and it's a pretty good system. So some of the tools that I use are AWS Code Deploy, and I also use Laravel's Envoyer. And sometimes if the site is easy, for my own site and for a few others that I manage, I actually just have my own deployment method. And basically what it does is just pulls from a Git repo on the server. It's triggered by a webhook, and it basically just allows the files to be delivered to the server. So Regardless of all that, there's really plenty of options to choose from. So I would say just choose what's best for you. In all, website monitoring is an essential part of maintaining good business strategy and helps build rapport with your customers. If users go to a site and that site has problems with availability, then chances are they may not return. It's a good choice to make website monitoring a part of your digital marketing strategy and build trust with your customers. That's it for this episode. Stay tuned for next Monday, and we're going to be talking about one of the most interesting subjects, web design and the psychology behind it.